A very good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Maritime Education Podcast. My name is Barry Sadler, and I'm really pleased to say that today I'm with Philip Williams of Williams Shipping. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, Barry.
How are you this evening, Phil?
I'm very good. Yeah, thank you for inviting me to join you. I've listened to your podcasts and enjoyed them, so it's a real honour to be. You think I'm interesting enough to
to interview
to interview me? Yeah, thank you.
Well, no, thank you very much for agreeing. I think it'd be really interesting for us to have a discussion about your new vessel, the Wildiscover. But before we do that, let's talk about Williams Shipping and where you've gone really from the days of your great grandfather.
I'm fifth generation.
Fifth generation, yeah. George Williams.
Yes, that's right.
Tell me a bit about the company, Phil.
Yeah, well, I mean, the business started in 1894. George Williams had been on windjammers, and he came ashore and decided to sort of set up a business on the sea. He got married and then set up a business on the sea, and it was based out of Ashlet Creek, behind Fawley.
Oh yes.
And he had his first vessel was a small sailing barge called Spec, and most of the work that he was carrying out was moving cargoes on the Solent between Southampton and the Isle of Wight, up the Beaulieu River, and various wharfs. I mean, there were a lot more wharfs, of course, within the Solent at that time. I mean, even on the Medina, there were a huge number of wharfs, which we don't see so much now. But so much was moved around by barge, bricks, grain, salt, all sorts of things. And so that's how the business was set up. Luckily, there was a next generation that was interested in the business, who took it forward. The business operated during the war, and the vessels were taken over by the MOD and were used carrying ammunition and various cargoes. After the war, the business moved to the Town Quay in Southampton, which was, of course, a working quay at that stage. And the fleet sort of grew and developed. And of course, they were changed to running on diesels. The Spec was running on diesel.
You changed Spec to diesel because she was originally a sailing vessel, wasn't she?
In fact, the Spec was originally a rowing pinnace. She was a naval rowing pinnace that was then converted to sail and then converted to diesel. If we kept her for long enough now, she'd probably be converted back to sail again.
And she was called Spec because he considered himself a speculative man.
I think possibly that was the story. Yeah, that was the story. But he built a good little fleet of these wooden barges. They required a huge amount of maintenance, of course.
Yes.
And there was a slipway at Ashlet where they'd pull them out and they'd be slipped every year. And they all looked absolutely immaculate. I mean, it was just so important that, of course, that these boats were kept in tip-top condition. So real sort of seamanship, things were very, very different
in
then.
Those days. Yeah,
it was, and there's some wonderful stories about going up the Medina, and they were going up to Newport, and they'd stop off for a couple of pints at
the good old days.
The folly on the way up there. Still sitting there, the folly, of course. You can imagine them running aground on the mud and going ashore and having a couple of pints, and then coming out. So so that's how the business started. And luckily, it's sort of there's always been another generation who's remained interested in the business.
So Ashlet Creek is just by Fawley, just to the south of Fawley, and it's almost full circle because a big arm of the business was servicing Fawley, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think throughout the business's history. I mean, I think
even today.
Yeah, yes, but I mean, before the jetty was, we were involved when the jetty was built. And today we're working at Fawley, changing the loading arm out as we speak. So we still do an awful lot for the Fawley refinery.
And I think I counted up on your spec sheet earlier on that was somewhere in the region of 34, 35 vessels, individual vessels you've got now?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, some of them are vessels that have no crew. They're barges for carrying cargoes and carrying cranes. So we're probably about 15 or 16 propelled vessels with crew, and they are based in Southampton. at our marine base in Pembroke Dock in Milford Haven, and then a number of them are working around the coast. So, I mean, at the moment we have a vessel working at Hinkley Point for the nuclear power station. We've got a vessel working in Hythe in Scotland. We've got a vessel working in Holyhead. We've got one of the small vessels working on the north coast of Germany. Without crew, actually, that's on a bareboat. But I mean, we work all over the place. But Southampton is home.
Yes, yeah. And these vessels that are working around the coast, most of them are workboats, cats of some description, designed to work.
Yeah, absolutely. These are sort of multi-purpose vessels that would have 3 or 4 crew, large crane, quite a lot of power for moving barges, and supporting civil engineering work, construction work, renewables, all sorts of industries where they are sort of working with machinery and equipment, and predominantly construction of some sort. Yeah.
It's really lovely talking to you, Phil, because obviously I've been a pilot in the port of Southampton, but even way before that, as a cadet in 1985, I was joining ships where barges, water barges, and the good old fireworks barge, dragged out by Williams Shipping to set the fireworks off for when we used to come past on cruise ships when I was a young third officer. Williams Shipping involved in that. So our paths, shipping paths, have crossed frequently over the last 40 years, really. So it's great to talk to you. So these multi-cat vessels, let's move on to your latest one, the Wildiscover. So I was lucky enough to be invited, about a month ago now, 3 weeks ago, to the naming of your new ship, the Wildiscover. Tell us a bit about the Wildiscover.
Okay, so Wildiscover is as you say, it's the latest multi-cat vessel that we've built. Multi-cat is really a brand name of Darman shipyards. This is actually built by a yard called Neptune Shipyards, and so they call them Euro carriers. This one is 24 metres long and 9.5 metres beam. It's fairly powerful. It's about 1,600 horsepower, which for a small boat is fairly substantial. She has accommodation for 6 crew. She has actually I think you'd probably agree, quite a high standard of fit out. Very, very quiet, very comfortable, all air conditioned. She has sort of a state-of-the-art sort of navigation suite. Maybe not by your standard, Barry, because you're coming in on some very sophisticated.
The skipper was showing me the kit up there on the bridge, and for the size of vessel, it's quite impressive, isn't it? We do see some very impressive sort of turnouts on cruise ships, but this isn't a cruise. This is a working barge. So for a working barge, she was state-of-the-art navigation and equipment. Yeah,
I mean, she's not ECDIS yet, so the crew still use paper charts.
Oh, really?
So that's a decision that we could make. We could have a full ECDIS vessel. And ultimately, I think that may become that may be something we have to do when paper charts ultimately
2030.
2030, yeah. So in the life of that vessel, we'll have to go to full ECDIS. Mm-hmm. But there's no cost saving on navigation equipment in terms of the quality of the radars, the size of the radars, and all the sort of the navigation equipment, FLIR cameras, infrared cameras for picking people up in the water. Some very sophisticated software. One of the other operations we do is ploughing, which is sort of clearing up after the dredgers have done their work, and literally dragging a metal plough along the seabed and pulling the lumps into the holes. And there's some very sophisticated software on there which allows us to monitor exactly what depth the plough's at, and it's taking live information on tides. So it knows exactly what depth that is at any given state of the tide, and is able to feed all the data back into the hydrographers. So I mean that's another element of the work that it does, but it has to be quite sophisticated.
Just to explain to the listeners that ploughing is a necessary evil, isn't it? Your dredgers, your suction dredgers go along and they suck up the mud, or they dredge up the mud, or they use a backhoe, a digger, in other words, to dig up the mud. But you end up with lumps in troughs, if you like, in the dredging. And what Phil's saying is that his boats go along and they smooth over those troughs so that the average depth is that's advertised at the end of the day.
Exactly. And equally what it might be doing is it might be pulling the silt off a concrete. If there's a concrete lip or a concrete dock, it might be pulling the silt off that dock. And of course, environmentally, it's not removing any of the material. It's not taking the material and taking it several miles away and dumping it. It is just moving it small distances. But yes, it's a necessary evil of maintaining.
We call it a necessary evil only because we have to do it. It's work that has to be done to achieve the depth that we want to maintain. Excellent. So Neptune Yards in Holland. In Holland. Tell us a bit about them. Why did you choose Neptune?
Well, we've been building vessels with Neptune since about 1998. They weren't a huge yard. They were building a lot of barges and a lot of these sorts of workboats for the dredging companies and civil engineering companies, predominantly in Holland. They've grown substantially, and they're building vessels in Holland, but also in the Far East, in China. This particular vessel was built entirely in Holland. But they're just built to a very, very high standard, as all the Dutch yards tend to do.
Yeah.
I think where they have an advantage, I mean, I'd love to be building British, and I think where these Dutch yards have a bit of an advantage is in their order books are larger because they're building for all the Dutch dredging companies and these big Dutch marine civils companies. And every time they build a vessel, they tweak it and they develop it, and it just gets better and better and better. If we ordered another vessel from Neptune today, it would probably have some improvements on the Wildiscover. I don't know what they are yet, but I guarantee that they'll discover something and they'll incorporate something. I mean, when we looked at this vessel on actually in the sheds, it had I think it had 5-blade propellers on it, and I said, God, they're quite. It's quite big. I haven't seen 5-blade propellers that size on a workboat before. And they said, well, we had 4-blade propellers made and 5-blade propellers made, and then we launched an identical vessel with the 4-blade propellers, and we did all the vibration tests and the noise tests, and then we lifted it out, and then we put the 5-blade propellers on, and we put it back in, and we did all the tests again. And we discovered that we could reduce vibration, reduce noise, and maintain the same bollard pull and speed. So they were able to do that. It's very difficult to get a yard that hasn't got that throughput of work to do that. It's that sort of attention to detail.
It's a lot of proactivity as well, isn't it? Some yards just sit on the backside and say, the 4-blade propellers will do, But to move forward and to actually consider it, test, retest, and offer you that opportunity to...
I've just rung them up and said, I need a second set of propellers in case we get any damage. And they said, yeah, that's fine. I said, how much is that? They said, €50,000. I thought, oh, God. I've got to go back to my FD now and tell them that we need a spare set of propellers for €50,000.
For just Wildiscover?
Just for Wildiscover, yeah. That's the only vessel that they can fit, yeah.
Oh, I see. It does, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people think you just nip out and just buy yourself we need a new propeller. Yeah. Please get us a new propeller. It's a significant investment.
It's a 3-month delivery.
On the propeller?
On the propellers.
Yeah. Best to have them.
That's why we need them there, because if we do get some damage. And we do, because we are asked to do all sorts of work in shallow water. I mean, even for ABP, Barry will be asked to go up the Itchen and do work in close proximity to the seabed. If you pick up a chain, could be the end of that propeller, and you need a replacement. The nature of what we're doing is such that we need to. I mean, losing that sort of period of time while you're waiting for a part to arrive would be a disaster. And actually, I think it's becoming more and more of an issue. So where much more was held on the shelf, it isn't these days. So all the spare parts and bits of equipment and machinery for our vessels and for ships generally, the lead times are much longer than they ever used to be.
And as you've just said, she's a one-off vessel for you guys. You've not got the luxury of having 6 or 7 of them. Yeah. So, if you've got one laid up in Pembroke, you can just nick the prop off of that and put it on. No,
they're all different.
They're all different. They're all unique, aren't they?
Yeah.
Excellent. So over she came. I believe one of your was it your nephew?
My nephew is on board.
Crewed her over.
Yeah. So
young Nick Williams.
Nick. Yeah, he's
sixth generation. Then.
Sixth generation. Just completed his pre-cadetship, and he's looking to go into the Merchant Navy. He's waiting to find out who he's going to be sponsored by. And hopefully he'll be spending some time at sea and at Solent University. And
brilliant, fantastic.
See how that goes. So he jumped at the opportunity to be part of the delivery crew to go over to Holland and to bring the vessel back, which he thoroughly enjoyed. So I'm sure a lot of the listeners to this podcast will be really impressed and really happy that it is a family business, that absolutely everybody is involved in this, aren't they? Every
step of the way.
It really is. And of course my niece named and christened the vessel. So again, yes, it is totally a family affair. I mean, our crew are very close, and we have a very close senior management team. But I think they appreciate the fact that it is a family. Mm-hmm. That the way people are treated, and the way I think it's a different feel to a corporate.
There's a pride in what you're doing when it's family.
Yeah,
I think that you sometimes don't get with a larger corporate company.
Yes.
There's that pride in what you're producing. Yeah. Your website talks about the reliability of George in those years. And I think because of the family is able to communicate so effectively, that reliability comes through at the end of the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's a responsibility not to let the side down.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it is, because we sort of feel like caretakers. I mean, I hope very much that I pass it on to the sixth generation, and they'll be able to do the same. I mean, it's not not something that we're building up to sell off. It's something that we just want to maintain, and we want it to grow, and we want it to have a good name. We want to have a good name as an employer. We want to have a good name with our customers. Mm-hmm. We want to have a good name with our suppliers and all our stakeholders. So
So looking to the future, I went on board Wildiscover, and she is remarkably well built vessel. How many years do you think you'd get out of that ship? Or
well, we've got a slightly smaller one, a 22 by 9 metre vessel, which is now 18 years old. She's still in class. She's still in good shape. I mean, I think that we would look at the life of one of those vessels from a financial perspective. We'd be looking at it over a 25-year period.
Okay.
But in reality, you could run them for much longer than that. And of course, you can buy new engines, you can buy new gearboxes, and you replace bits of steel plate, and you replace bits of equipment, and it's sort of that sort of triggers broom scenario, where actually they can run on indefinitely. I think that they are getting more sophisticated in terms of things like emissions, noise levels, as we said, and various things which perhaps the complexity is such that they're not going to last as long as the more simple engineered vessels of yesteryear. Well, certainly they're going to be more expensive once they get to sort of 25 years. I think to keep them beyond that point, they may get more expensive to maintain, but they will carry on. I mean, the steel plate on the Wildiscover, a lot of it's 20 mil thick. I mean, it's
big heavy stuff.
It's big heavy stuff. It's heavily built. It's not like we have fiberglass pilot boats, 25 years, and they're gonna look pretty tired.
And I guess the kind of work that one of these boats will do, be it lifting some ground tackle, lifting a buoy, that kind of work is always going to be there. There's always going to be the need to do it. So it's not as if in 20 years' time we're looking to adapt the vessel to try and do some other amazing job. It's probably going to stick to its real core value, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we always talk, when we're talking about this, we often say, well, sea defences is going to become a massive issue, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, rising sea levels. The weather seems to be getting. I know you're a bit of an expert on weather as well, Barry.
Yes.
So the weather that we're seeing
it
does seem to be getting more and more extreme.
Yes, it is.
And the damage that's being caused is getting more and more extreme. So vessels that can get involved in marine civils and marine civils construction, I think they're going to have a bigger part to play moving forward.
Yeah.
Because there is going to be so much reconstruction that's going to be required.
So she falls within the the IMO's Tier 3 requirement, or is she just slightly outside?
No,
we had a discussion about it before. I can't remember what we said.
Yeah, she is IMO Tier 3. So she's the first vessel that we've had that's IMO Tier 3.
Okay.
Which obviously means she's carrying urea tanks and has this exhaust after treatment system for treating the exhaust to remove NOx and SOx. It does add a layer of complexity to the vessel. I think that, clearly as time moves on, it's going to become paramount that these vessels have these higher and higher minimum standards. I think if there was another Thames Tunnel Tideway project now, they'd probably say every vessel's got to be Tier 3.
Yes.
So at the moment, we don't. I think a lot of the people we work for might not ask for it, but I think as time moves on, they'll be saying, on the tender document, they'll be saying, "Is it Tier 3? Tick the box," and that's going to make a difference. It'll be interesting to see how that changes. Obviously, Barry, the big issue for us, it's a huge investment, as we discussed, and one of the things that's held back some investment in shipping is not knowing what's happening with the fuels that we should be using moving forward. And we've had this discussion, and these vessels are right at the thin end of the wedge. They're right at the very beginning of what might be possible. There are a couple of hybrid vessels that are in operation. Minuscule, because we might get a call tomorrow saying, can a Wildiscover go to Aberdeen, and the hybrid system currently, the electric side of it, just doesn't provide a huge amount of power. But it will change, and it has I think it has slowed people, but it has made people think, what do we do? How do we move forward? But Tier 3 is at the moment is the best that we can do from an emissions point of view. The other thing, of course, is whether we will be able to burn HVO or one of these synthetic diesels, which would reduce emissions again, and that's something which I think is going to happen.
So she's almost exclusively operating around the UK coast. So at least 2/3 of the time she's going to be operating in that emission control area anyway, isn't she?
She is.
So she's going to need to comply. But it's still good to see that, as we progress along, that the IMO's vision is still there. Albeit, as you say, the thin end of the wedge, the vision is still there. The reduction in emissions required by a Tier 3 engine, 1/5 of the emissions of nitrous oxide than a Tier 1 engine. So it's a massive reduction in emissions in itself. Even if it's not an alternative fuel, it's still a real step forward.
It is. And when you see these vessels operating, just after the christening, as she departed the berth on the Itchen, as she left, there was no noise, there was no smoke. It was, quite uneventful from that perspective. In the old days, it would, it would have been plumes of black smoke, and we'd all been impressed by the engine
thunder
noise
of the engine.
But that just doesn't happen. It's a totally different sort of
It's a sign of the times, isn't it? Slipping away quietly from the berth with minimal exhaust. That's where we're at. That's just where we're at with engines. Where we're at with emissions, and it's signposting where we're all going to end up having to go in the next 10-15 years. So that's great. So we've talked about this, but I think a lot of our listeners who work on ships probably assume that when a ship owner wants a new ship, they just go to their finance officer. How much do you need? Yes, I need X million, and you go out and buy it. It's not quite that simple, is it, Phil?
No, it isn't. No, I mean, getting funding for these vessels, they're huge investments, and we don't have that sort of money sitting around just to choose what we want to buy next and go out and buy it. So we have to have support from funders who will allow us to and we have to put a case together. How are we going to actually repay for these vessels? How are we going to earn our money? What do our accounts look like? What is our future order book? And future order book, of course, is quite difficult. A future order book for the next 6 months, 12 months might be okay, but these vessels work quite speculatively. They go from project to project to project. So you do as much as you can, but there's also a lot of heart in it. You've really got to be invested personally in fighting to make this work, to go out there to win the business, to be the best at what you're doing, so you do win the business. And it's because you've got to show that you can make a return.
Do financiers look at you as a family business, and does that shine a better light financially when they look at you as a family business? They go, "Oh, family business. What if brother wants to leave or whatever?" Does it have an effect?
I think the positive effect is that we've been going for an awful long time, so we've got a track record. So we're not jumping into stuff that we don't understand. Mm-hmm. We do understand the risks. We do purchase very wisely. We've got a very good senior management team. We've got a good marine team with superintendency. We've got all the blocks in place to manage a vessel efficiently, to crew a vessel properly. I think if you're coming into the market fresh, and some people will come in, new entrants will come into the market, and they might do a very good job of it. But from a lender's perspective, an old established business that's been doing it for a long time, has got a workforce that's been working with them for a long time, and has those sort of management functions in place, the crewing and the superintendency. I think that gives people more comfort.
It's easier, I guess, for them to see the organisation as well.
Yeah,
rather than a conglomerate where one piece of the jigsaw, finance is a piece of the jigsaw, a long way away. You're an entire puzzle sort of together, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely, that's true. I mean, we're sort of well hedged. We're in various different markets, and I think that probably gives some reassurance. Having said that, and I know you'll be well aware from this, with shipping generally, you'll get a world downturn in trade, and all the banks will suddenly run into a huge panic that they've decided they want to pull out of the banking sector, or they want to pull out of shipping, or they want to pull out of offshore, or they want to pull out of and now suddenly there'll be a sudden trend for them all to pull out, and then you'll be scrubbing around trying to find lenders, and then the sector might become popular again, and they all sort of start flooding back in again. So it does sort of ebb and flow.
It's one of the things about shipping, isn't it? In that most parts of shipping, particularly your part, the maintenance, the sort of general working part of it, containers and shipping like that is always going to be there. The need for it is going to just go on and on and on. And I guess that's something, if you went there with a very, very niche ship, yes, I'm going to bring out a new type of cruise ship, your finances are going to go around. Yeah. Is that going to work? But you're always going to need to do ploughing. You're always going to need to do ground tackle. Sea defences, as you say, are just going to get more and more important as our weather seems to be getting more and more wild. So this is all work that's in the pipeline.
It is. And I think you've got to look all the time. We're not building a vessel for us. We're building a vessel for our customers. Right. So what are they telling us that they want? I mean, I might think, oh, this is a good idea. I want to go off and do that. I want to build this. I want to make it like this. Actually, what do our customers want? What are they asking for? Every job we're going on, what are they saying? I like the vessel. It'd be great if you could do this. It'd be great if you could do that. So how can we, make sure that we're encompassing what our customers want? A bit in the same way, we speak to our crew and we say, look, when you're stuck on this vessel for 3 weeks, what are the problems? What do you feel that you're missing? What would make being on this vessel for that period of time better, more comfortable? What would make the crew happier? When we ordered the vessel, we sent the crew and the engineer out to the yard, and they spent a few days in the yard, sort of just starting the first time, and just sort of starting to say what they wanted, where, and how they wanted things moved around from a comfort point of view. And then they went out again very close to the end of the build and did the same again. And it's very much sort of make it comfortable for the crew will be happy. And that's a really important thing, because if they're providing, if they're unhappy, they're going to be a bit grumpy with the customer at the end of the day. Yeah. And the other thing is build what the customer wants, not what you want. Build what the customer wants. I hope we've achieved that.
Yeah, I think you have, because based upon the reactions of the people that were there for the christening, and there were quite a lot of your customers there. Everybody seemed to be very impressed.
Well, it's funny when we were getting it ready to take round to the christening, it had had an A-frame set up on the stern for a plough. And I said to the guys, look, I think we should take the A-frame off because, it looks a bit unwieldy, and I think that people are it's a bit of a trip hazard, and, I think people need to see what the vessel looks like, and this A-frame is sitting in the way. When we got to the christening, one of the dredging companies came up to me and said, "You're going to get an A-frame for it?" So, I best intentions, but
yeah, it's great. It's great as well that you spent a bit of time listening to your crew, and I believe you spoke to the master, your intended master, for it quite a bit. But I think it's great that you involve the crew from an early stage. You're almost giving the ship to the crew rather than giving the crew to the ship. There's a real balance to be struck there, isn't there?
Oh, there is, absolutely. And I think the crew can be quite transient. If they're working time on, time off, they can work anywhere in the country they like, or they can work abroad. And I think that it's at the end of the day, they've got their package, and the package has got to be right. But actually, where are they working? What conditions are they working in? What are their surroundings? They can make a choice, and actually, you want to make that as good as you possibly can.
If you make it a good choice, then you'll attract the higher,
absolutely, yeah,
higher skilled crew.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're coming to the end of our podcast, Philip. So, future for Williams Shipping?
Well, I mean, I think the future's bright. I'm really I'm quite excited about it. I'm quite excited about Southampton. I think there's an awful lot of good things happening in Southampton, our home port. It's very exciting, the stuff that's happening on the waterfront there.
There's a lot, actually.
It's a lot going on.
Yes.
It's busy. It's vibrant. So that in itself is really important. I think we've got good numbers of crew coming through. We've got an apprenticeship scheme. We're bringing through a number of apprentices every year, and a lot of them are staying. So our biggest worry for many, many years has been new people coming into the industry, and are we going to run out of crew? But we're really doing everything we can, and so are other people. So we're adding to the pot, and people will, again, it'll be transient, but as long as we keep bringing young people in, I think that's really important. We've got a younger generation, next generation, that's interested in the business.
Brilliant.
And so I feel very upbeat, Barry.
Yeah, no, I've worked with Williams Shipping now for a long, long, long time, and the familiarity of seeing your blue vessels buzzing around, knowing that they are expert at what they do, because you've been doing it for so long, and that experience is passed down through the generations, not just through your family, but through the generations of people that work for you. I'm sure there have been several families that are returnees of yours as employees, and it's just great to see a local Southampton shipping company. It's just nice to see those blue boats when they arrive.
Brilliant.
Philip, thank you very, very much for talking to me this evening. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you about Williams Shipping, and maybe in the future we can sit down and talk about something else for the Maritime Education podcast.
Absolutely, Barry. That'd be great. No, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Philip.